Before we begin the session by Shri V. Sriram, I thought I would give you the results of the online poll conducted over the debate yesterday on whether Shringaram is relevant to Bharatanatyam or not. And I think this audience will be glad to know that 90% voted that it is relevant, while 10% said it is outdated. And I'm also happy to share with you that yesterday afternoon, we had a special workshop where about 32 young dancers had registered, and Srimati Priyadarshini Govind took them through a very, very heavy padam of Sivadiksha Parulanura of Ganam Sinaya, and they actually went through every bit of it, understood the principles of Abhinaya for this particular piece, and learnt this entire padam. I'm very happy to say that we were able to provide a very significant and a very tangible learning outcome for a section of young dance students as part of this conference. Shri V. Sriram really needs no introduction. He's an entrepreneur, columnist, music historian, and heritage activist who is known for his books in the history of Chennai, on the history of Chennai, Carnatic music, and Chennai theatre. Born in the UK, Sriram studied engineering and his MBA from Delhi. He works as the COO of Broadgate Technical Services, a software firm based in Chennai, and also manages his family firm of industrial hydraulics. Mr. Sriram started writing on the history of Madras from the mid-1990s. He has authored over 10 books and is a regular columnist for The Hindu, for whom he pens a column titled Hidden Histories. I welcome him today to deliver his lecture on Tyagaraja Swami and the Sringara Rasa. As much as an anachronism that sounds, let us not forget the unbelievably romantic and atmospheric Nauka Charitram that I recall dancing in as Krishna so many, many years ago. Shri V. Sriram.
Good afternoon. I just heard the result of that poll and I was wondering what the remaining 10% were thinking of. How did they get into this world without Sringara Rasa is what I would like to investigate. But anyway, the people are very strange, so we will leave it at that. I have been given 45 minutes and I promise you that I will finish in the 44th minute. And I will not at the 45th minute say, for want of time, I haven't told you most of the things that I had promised to tell you. But I have to read these two books in full to you during this presentation, and I hope I can finish. Okay, the point is about Tyagaraja and Sringara Rasa. Let me start this way, that as Srinidhi says, it does appear to be quite an anachronism. Because we have worked very hard in the last 250 years to de-Shringaraize the Trinity. Tyagaraja, Dikshitar and Shyama Shastri, we have ensured that they are dehumanized as much as possible and that they are three divine beings who came probably due to mitosis or meiosis or one of those automatic cell reproductions that take place. They also left behind a family which of course must have come due to mitosis or meiosis. And they appear to have had no relationships of any kind with any woman or any lady, and which is all very difficult to stomach. But that is the way we've treated them. And if you remember, all three of them were born because of direct divine intervention. God appeared in the dream of the father and said, tomorrow, baby. And yes, tomorrow there was baby. And baby not ordinary, but blessed, divine, and so on and so forth. So that is how we have treated the Carnatic Trinity. But, and so if you say that Dikshitar composed Rupa Mujuchi, they will always tell you, no. That is an aberration that has come by mistake into the book. He hasn't really composed it. Even now there is quite a debate on whether Rupa Mujuchi is his composition. People keep saying it was Ramaswamy Dikshitar's composition. It cannot be Muthuswami. However, eppadi sir eppadi compose pannirukka mudiyum. Then similarly, there's an Ananda Bhairavi Varnam of Shyama Shastri on Varadaraja Swami, which is full of Sringara Rasa. But again, greatly discounted. Nobody will even talk about it because obviously it is, you have soiled your family escutcheon if you have composed words, songs like that. So Tyagaraja also falls into that same category. Before we get on with the main topic, I'll just tell you that I have divided it into 3 sections. The first section is on a little bit about the life and the circumstances of Tyagaraja, on which I promise I will not dwell very long. And then there is a main section which deals with some of the songs in which I interpret it as Sringara Rasa of Tyagaraja. So I'm open to being challenged on that. And if you challenge me, I'll say, okay, you're right, and I'll sit down. That's about it. But the point is that, in my opinion, there is a significant amount of Sringara in these compositions. And lastly, I'll deal with the post-Tyagaraja scenario when an active effort had been made to remove the Sringara element from his life, and how Sringara, after his death, came back with a vengeance and taught him and everybody else a good lesson. So this is the broad framework in which I have structured this presentation. So Tyagaraja, as you know, as many of you know, born in 1767 to Rama Brahmam and Sitamba. And Tyagaraja's father was a discourser of the Ramayana in the court of the king, in the court of King Tulaja. And therefore, the Ramayana was something that Tyagaraja was very familiar with right from the time he was born. And the court ordained that Tyagaraja's father should go to Thiruvayyaru and distribute land to the Pandits who were experts in Varuna Japam. So the houses were supposed to be on the banks of the river Kaveri. So every time the rains failed and the water level came down, these Pandits had to move out of their houses and perform the Varuna Japam in the bed of the river Kaveri. So even today that street stands. That is called the Padinaindu Mandapa Theru in Thiruvayyaru. The moment you come from Tanjavur to Thiruvayyaru, that is the first street that you will come across on your left-hand side. And it still has several of those Padinaindu houses. So 15 houses were entrusted to Tyagaraja's father, who then selected the people who could go and reside in them. And even today, some of the families live there, and many of those houses are still standing in very good order. Because the king was so happy with Tyagaraja's father having done this task so well, he said that you should stay on in Thiruvayyaru, and the king gave him a fairly significant amount of agricultural land and a house. And that is the family house in which Tyagaraja was, he came shortly after his birth, and he lived on. Tyagaraja was, from the manuscripts that have survived of his life, we realize that if the Ramayana was important, Potana's Bhagavatam was also equally important. And so when you read Tyagaraja, you find that the Bhagavatam, where a significant section, the Dashamaskandam, which deals entirely with Krishnavataram and the Rasa Leela and all that, he was equally familiar with that as he was with the Ramayana. Which is why in songs like Sadinchane and all that, you have lines like Range Shudu Sadga, Gopi Jana Manorathamu Sangalekane Keli Uchese Vadu Sadinchane O Manasa. So you have lines like that. So he was equally familiar with the concept of Sringara Rasa right from inception. And his grandfather, Veena Kalahastiyaya, was a very famous musician. So he inherited the music talent that came from his mother's side, Veena Kalahastiyaya being the mother's father. This again, incidentally, in Carnatic music, anything that comes from the mother's side is automatically discounted. It's always inherited from the father. People don't believe that anything could have come from the mother other than the actual physical process of birth. So even till recently, we had a very famous artist who published a huge biodata of himself, where his father and the mother are portrayed as photographs. Only the father's name is mentioned. The mother's name is not even mentioned. So when I asked him about the mother, he said she was only a simple housewife and dismissed the mother in that one line. So with that kind of an attitude, how do you even credit Tyagaraja's mother with any musicality? But so the music evidently, while the Ramayana came from the father's side, the music evidently came from the mother's side. And he was, of course, he must have been a prodigy, but he did learn music. And he learned music from a court musician, Sonti Venkataramanaya, who was in the Tanjavur Darbar. So once again, Tyagaraja could not have not known of Darbar traditions, of courtesans, of people singing for the entertainment of the king and the nobles. He must have been completely aware of all these things. And in my view, he does bring several facets of this into his songs. The rest of the story is very well known. I don't believe that his brother threw any idol into any river and that any Garuda told him that the idol was. That is not. In fact, to give Tyagaraja credit, he never mentions it anywhere. He does not say, my brother threw the idol into the river. For a man who could bring so much of surrounding village gossip into his songs, he was remarkably reticent about the brother throwing the idol into the river. He never says it anywhere. So I don't believe that, but he does say that he has trouble within the family. For instance, in Nadupai Palikeru Narulu, he says, people are blaming me for the partition of the family property. So he does mention that he had difficulty, but he steadfastly believed in Rama, and then eventually, as you all know, he took sannyasa and then he was buried on the banks of the river Kaveri. But if you look at the how shall I put it, the classification of Tyagaraja's songs, which was done by people like C. Ramanujachari and Dr. V. Raghavan, there is a certain section of songs which falls under the category of Rupa Mahima, which describes Rama's physical beauty as seen by Tyagaraja. And the first song that I would like to take up is Endu Kaugalintura Ninnentani Varnintura. Which part of your body am I to embrace? What can get more Sringara than that? How am I to describe you? Then, of course, the rest of it is, Needu Paluke Palukura, your speech only is speech. The next line defies description in English. Needu Kuluke Kulukura. That is, your bearing is the closest that I can get to. The next one is even more difficult. It can only be said in a Dravidian language. Needu Taluke Talukura. Avaloda Taluke enna appadini ethana padathila namba paakrom. That line is incorporated into this song, and all of it in the meaning, obviously they were so embarrassed that Tyagaraja could have used words like this. Your brilliance alone is brilliance. That's the only translation that has been given, nothing further than that. But I defy you to give a description of Taluk in English. Particularly with Victorian morals being there, a word like Taluk would have been damned right up front. Then the word Sogasu, which appears so often in Tyagaraja's song, Sogasu Juda Tarama. How do you translate that? How do you translate a word like Sogasu into English? Is it beauty? It is definitely not beauty, it is something else. And the same song says that with your glossy cheeks, your face shining with its glossy cheeks. Now the way he describes Rama in the song Sogasu Juda Tarama, once again, there is a lot of very wonderful Sringara in the way he feasts his eye on the form of the Lord. In fact, if you read Sundarakandam, and when Sita, sitting in the forest, meets up with Hanuman, and Sita, being a very, very intelligent woman, is not wanting to take Hanuman at face value, and she asks him a set of very penetrating questions as to how can she believe that he was really a messenger from Rama and that he was not a Rakshasa in disguise. And among that, there is a fantastic description of Rama as given by Hanuman, where he describes the entire body of Rama right down to the most private of Rama's parts. And when Hanuman describes that, you can see how he has feasted his eyes on Rama it almost, in today's context, you can even put other interpretations to it, which I do not want to get into because I do not want to be misinterpreted. And particularly these are days when the Ramayana is a holy cow. You can't interpret it in any way you want to. The next day you'll have an income tax raid in your house if you... So I'm not going to talk about that. But the point is that the way Hanuman describes Rama, when he says that 6 parts of his body are elevated, so many parts of his body are elongated. So he is well endowed in certain parts. Now, when you look at all that, you find that there again there is a lot of Sringara in the Sundarakandam, which is completely brushed aside. We don't even talk about the only Sringara that you can think of in Ramayana is the description of the Rakshasis in Ravana's court, where all of them are sleeping in various postures. Once again, I'm digressing a little, but I just want to establish that the Ramayana has its own elements of Sringara as well. So, one of the most erotic moments in the work is when Ravana comes to meet Sita, when Hanuman is seated on top of the tree, and Ravana comes to meet her with his white silk robe tied to his shoulder, knotted to the waist, all this in Valmiki. And then when he comes to meet up with her, and then, all that speech, that argument between the two of them. At this point, the Rakshasi Dhanyamalini goes and throws her hand around Ravana and embraces him and says, "What is the possible joy that a human being can give you? Come with me. I am a Rakshasi, equal to you in every way, and let's enjoy life." And then in one movement, he laughs and he pushes her aside, and then he continues talking to Sita. That is probably one of the most romantic moments in the entire Ramayana, when this woman literally throws herself on Ravana. But we've got other songs like Maravakara Nava Manmatha Rupuni. Maravakara Nava Manmatha Rupuni. Don't forget me, O one who is Manmatha personified. And in that song, he says, Kuluko Pavula, Giluko Kapuramu, Paluko Chekkula, Taluko Manasa. Once again, he is describing Rama in the most interesting fashion. Rama, who is such a boring deity to all of us, who was eternally duty bound, and one fine morning kicked out his wife when some dhobi or somebody passed a comment on her. So, but that Rama is described to such beautiful extent. And then there are songs like, when am I going to see you? Ni muddu momu jupave. When am I going to have compassion on me and show me your beautiful face shining like the moon to cheer my heart? I will keep you within my heart and I will keep you happy there. Now, how many padams and javalis have the same expression in them? Tyagaraja uses them and quotes them and utilizes the same expressions in his songs. But if you want to look at the most interesting and non-Tyagaraja like Tyagaraja, you have to go to the Nauka Charitramu. As Srinidhi mentioned in her introduction, for a man who was rather condemning of illicit behavior, should I put it like that, Tyagaraja, in many of his songs, he dwells a lot on what the neighbors are doing. And he brings them all into the song. So he says, Somidamma Sogasogandra Gorite Somayaji Swargandru Dauno. How can the Somayaji go to heaven when his wife is seeking out younger paramours for her satisfaction? Now, this is in Manasu Nilpa Shakti Lekapode. And if you look at the Telugu play Tara Sashankamu, quoted by Vijay Sai in his book. By the way, how many of you are friends with this man? And how many of you are his enemies? See, several hands are being put up. Now, the point is that in Tara Sashankamu, I have not read the original, but I did read the English translation of the Tara Sashankamu, which is in the Tamil Nadu archives, when the British government was investigating various Indian works on grounds of obscenity. There is a complete translation of the Tara Sashankamu in the archives. And there, Brihaspati, who is the husband of Tara, confronts her over her affair with Chandra, the moon god. And in that, Tara turns around and tells Brihaspati that you spend all your time in sacrifices. What about my satisfaction? Now, this is something that obviously Tyagaraja was not very comfortable with, because he has questioned this kind of behavior in Manasu Nilpa. Similarly, there is this Yenta Muddo Yenta Suhaso in Bindu Malini, where he says, Atta Meeda Kanulasaru Dasule, people who are lusting after their own mothers-in-law. Satta Bhagavatula Veshulairi. These people are pretending to be Bhagavatas today. This, I said, how is it that anybody can lust after their mother-in-law? It goes against the complete modern tradition of a mother-in-law. Till T.S. Parsarthi came and explained it to me and said that you must not forget that in Tyagaraja's time, several men were married 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Some of them were closer in age to their mothers-in-law than what they were to their wives. And so it was but natural that that kind of behavior also existed. So he brings in that as well in his song. So he was rather condemning of that behavior. At the same time, he composed the Nauka Charitramu, which deals with a group of gopis going out to the river, wanting to go out on a boat ride, when they see Krishna coming in the opposite direction, and then they have a debate within themselves on whether they should take Krishna along. At that time, Krishna is only a child. And he's come out to buy jujube fruits. And then he says, I will also come along with you, because it is not correct that women like you should go out without a male escort. And so the girls then take Krishna onto the boat. And when you read the description in the song or the vachanas, that is when you realize how much Tyagaraja has observed of women's behavior. And he so faithfully depicts that. Like, for instance, when he says, because Krishna is very small at the time that they are going to put him into the boat, they have to lift him and place him into the boat. The boat is already in the water. He doesn't forget to mention that they gird their petticoats tightly before they lift the baby and then they put him into the boat. Such a small detail which he could have easily left out, but then he does include that in his song. Then there is another one where at the end, all the drama of Nauka Charitramu is over. Then they are listening to Krishna do Upadesha to them. How do they listen to it? Like newly delivered women listening to the midwife's advice. That is the way they are listening to Krishna. That is the amount of attention that they are paying to him. How much of observation must have gone in behind that one line? How much he must have seen of women delivering. Now, could this man have been devoid of Sringara Rasa? Could his baby have been born due to some blessing, or was it left by the stork at the doorstep? Tyagaraja did have a daughter. So, how do they prepare themselves for meeting with Krishna? Sringar in Chukoni, this is a Daruvu which is in Shuruti, said to Aditala. I am reading it from an excellent translation by Dr. Y. Bhagavati, Tyagaraja's Nauka Charitramu. With one woman laughing and moving gracefully, one wearing flowers in her chignon, one combing the curls or lock of hair, one woman gleefully teasing Krishna for fun. With one woman saying, "He is my man." One woman lacing up her blouse, one woman pointing to him as being suitable only to her, one woman pressing both his feet. With one woman fainting and staggering with love, one woman suddenly kissing Krishna, one woman calling him to her side, and one woman offering him folded betel leaves delightfully. And then it gets a little better. With one woman fetching at perfumes, one woman chanting Lord Hari, one woman drawing him towards her breast, one woman slipping her upper garment down and requesting him to get on, and so on and so forth. With one woman saying, "O lotus-eyed one," and calling him with a wink. One woman saying, "Come, come," and one woman calling him as the friend of Tyagaraja delightfully. Now, this is the kind of personality that so wrote the other songs as well. But you must remember that the Nauka Charitramu does not feature in even one Carnatic concert. Just identify one singer who has taken a song out of Nauka Charitramu and featured it as a part of their concert repertoire, except Dr. Balamurali Krishna maybe, and invariably Gandhamu Poyeruga. The other songs are not ever included, perhaps because there was a clear desire that we must keep this element out of, Tyagaraja, and we should get on with his bhakti. And then the next one, which is Tanayande Premayanutsu, which is in Bhairavi. How do they perform Rasa Krida? Thinking that Krishna loves her only, the girls danced forgetting themselves. With the infatuation of each one increasing, Krishna took a form for each one of them and danced with them. And how did he dance? Catching the hems of the upper golden garments of some, pushing well the feet of some, eyeing the beauty of some women, talking to some, and knowing their minds, Krishna danced. Reclining on the laps of some, painting the bodies of some with red-colored petals, painting the lips of some with red-colored petals, teasing the bodies of some with hands, standing behind some and interlacing their plaits. Placing musk forehead marks on the foreheads of some, kissing on the shining cheeks of some, sprinkling scented waters on the breasts of some, the friend of Tyagaraja conversed with others. And that is how Krishna danced. And then finally, there is a line about how they put back their garments after Rasa Krida. They have smeared sandal paste on one another. They have painted beauty spots on one another. They have given betel leaves with areca nut to one another. They have placed strings of pearls on one another. They have dressed one another with the garments of each other. They have put on the blouses of one another. Even today in Mannargudi, Rajagopala Swami temple, half the Moolavar is dressed in the garb of a woman. Because it is believed that after Rasa Krida, in the hurry to put on their clothes, Krishna took on the garments of some of the gopis and wore them. Which is why in Sri Rajagopala of Muthuswami Dikshitar, you have this line, Nari Vamabhaga Nari Veshadhara. How Shiva is the person who is Vamabhaga Nari Veshadhara. Where does Krishna come into this? It is after the Rasa Krida that he puts on some of the garments of the gopis and he becomes a Vamabhaga Nari Veshadhara. So that is indirectly indicated even in this composition of Tyagaraja. And the Sringara part of the Nauka Charitramu really ends here, because after that it becomes a lot of drama where the girls, each one imagines that Krishna has come into the boat only for her. Some of them think that they are even superior to Krishna and they refuse to listen to him because they say that he is a mere child. Whereupon the Lord organizes for a storm. And the storm comes and the boat rocks violently. The music of that song is so wonderful. I sometimes regret that I am not a musician, that I could sing it to you. But the description of the storm, and then the girls losing their courage and asking Krishna what to do, and a hole springs up in the boat and the water begins rushing in. And then he says, take off all your garments and put them into the hole so that it will get plugged. Which they do, and the water takes the garments away. And then they don't know what to do. And finally they realize that they've got the Supreme Being in their midst. They pray to him and the storm ceases and the boat comes to the shore. After which they all dance around Krishna. He becomes a baby once again because they carefully take him home and leave him there. So that is the ending of the Nauka Charitramu. So a completely different Tyagaraja, who was not the Tyagaraja who wrote envy or rather angrily about his neighbors behaving in an odd fashion. So this is Tyagaraja, a very, very interesting combination of, how shall I put it, of a personality who combines the greatest amount of religiosity with some very, very romantic pieces thrown in, sadly many of which are completely forgotten. Now, it is very interesting that a person who wrote like this had only male Brahmin disciples. And as Mr. V.A.K. Rangarao will agree with me, male Brahmin disciples must be the most staid and un-Sringara-like people possible. When I came in, he asked me, are you going to talk with your sacred thread across your chest? I said, yes, I am going to. And I agree with him. So he had only the most plain of disciples who probably only carried forward the bhakti tradition of Tyagaraja and re-emphasized that. And it is very interesting that a Dikshitar who was so very, how shall I put it, detached in his compositions. You don't find any personal reference of Dikshitar in any of his compositions. He had the most interesting set of disciples, all Nagaswaram and Devadasis. They were the people who were going to carry forward the Dikshitar tradition and move on. Which is probably why there was a great divorce between some of these songs of Tyagaraja and the songs that actually got presented onto the concert platform. And Tyagaraja, to make matters worse, became a sannyasi 3 days before he died. And so he had to be buried with all the sannyasi traditions. A monument was created for him. And then people conveniently forgot about Tyagaraja. They went ahead singing his songs. And Shraddha was done for him every year by his grandson. The grandson died at the age of 32. In Indian history, lots of people die at the age of 32. And if you don't die at the age of 32, you're not destined to be great, according to a certain interpretation. In fact, people who die even at the age of 36, you will find that they rewrite the date saying that he died at the age of 32. In fact, there is a theory that Tyagaraja died at the age of 32, by the way. In fact, before they discovered Tyagaraja's horoscope in the early 1900s, 6 different dates of birth for Tyagaraja are given. And the most favored one was 32, because Shankara had died at the age of 32. So how could Tyagaraja live any longer? So, as I said, he was, he became a sannyasi and he was buried, and they were conducting a shraddha for him every year at the spot where he was buried. And then his grandson died in 1855 or so. Tyagaraja died in 1847 at the advanced age of 80. Today, people live beyond the age of 100 thanks to modern medication. But in those days, average life expectancy was around 50 or so. So 80 was phenomenal. He was career bolt, if you consider modern parlance. And he had seen the entire world. So he died, and then his grandson didn't live very long. He died at the age of 32. And so the Shraddha at Thiruvayyaru ceased to exist. And after that, his disciples were conducting the Shraddha in their own respective homes. And Tyagaraja, as I said, died in 1847. It was in 1905 that the last of his surviving disciples, Krishna Bhagavatar and Sundara Bhagavatar, came back to Tiruvayyaru to identify the samadhi of this man. I do not refer to Tyagaraja as Tyagaraja Swami or Saint Tyagaraja because I don't believe in either of those appellations. So Tyagaraja was, they came to look for Tyagaraja's burial spot. And you must, if you are familiar with that place, you will know that Tyagaraja is not the only burial there. There were hundreds of sannyasis who had been buried at that spot. In fact, Tiruvayyaru is considered to be like Kasi. Anybody who wanted to die was brought to Tiruvayyaru, brought to the banks of the river and left within touching distance of the water, and when they died, they were buried or cremated or whatever at that spot. In fact, the famous Dubash Pachepa Mudaliyar, of whom we all know, Pachepa's college and all that, he was only 40. He had bathed in the Kuvam every day, so naturally he fell ill very early. And so at the age of 40, he went to Tiruvayyaru, and then he died of Madhumeha Roham and Parasika Vayu, which basically means diabetes and infantile paralysis. And he was left there, and then he died there. And a lot of his endowments are in that area. And he had two wives who immediately began quarreling on his estate. Which is why I always feel that songs like Enta Nerchina of Tyagaraja, which says that Enta Nerchina, Enta Juchina, Enta Varalaina, Kanta Dasule. No matter what you have seen, no matter who you are, every man is a slave to woman at the end of the day. And then Emi Jesite Nemi, where it says Meda Gattite Nemi, what is the point in building multi-storied houses? Andaru Landaru Jodu Gattite Nemi. You have tied lanterns in pairs inside that house. Because lantern was a new thing. The English glass was coming in that time from England, imported, and Tyagaraja obviously felt he should include it in his song. So he says, what's the point in building a multi-storied house and then putting lanterns in pairs? The man had died after building such a grand house. He never even lived there. So probably Tyagaraja was talking about Pachepa. But to come back, that was the spot that people favored to die in. They wanted to die there. So there were hundreds of those little cylindrical objects that had been put up on burial spots of people. These two men, they were 5 and 10 or some such thing when Tyagaraja died. So I don't even know what kind of memory they would have had of Tyagaraja. But they come back 60 years later and they go searching for Tyagaraja's Samadhi. And finally they identify it. How they identify it? Modern legend is that they heard the word Rama Rama being chanted all the time. Now, 100 years earlier, Marudanallur Sadguru Swamin came to identify the Samadhi of Bodhendra Swamigal. How did he identify it? He heard the word Rama Rama chanting from there. So the Tiruvayyaru area must have been full of tombstones chanting Rama Rama all the time. So anyway, Krishna Bhagavatar and Sundara Bhagavatar identify that as the tombstone of Tyagaraja. So everybody accepts that. They then renovate that tombstone and they put up a stone behind it which says that this has been repaired by Krishnan and Sundaram. And then they decide that every year we must conduct the Tyagaraja Aradhana here. Now, they are old, so their disciples Tillesthanam Narsimha Bhagavatar and Panchu Bhagavatar, they begin conducting the Tyagaraja Aradhana on their behalf. Now they need money for conducting the Tyagaraja Aradhana, so they come to Madras, which is the big city. I'm talking about 1906, 1907, and they conduct Harikathas on the story of Tyagaraja, which is when all these fictional elements in Tyagaraja's life have got built into him. That is, one man dies, he sings Najiva Dhara, so that man comes up to life again. All these things were brought into the story in order to create a larger-than-life personality. And people poured money. The Tyagaraja Aradhana became a great success from then on. And it was decided then and there that only men will participate in it. And it had to be that the Brahmins were allowed close to the Samadhi. The Nagaswaram artists had to stand a little distance away and play on the Nagaswaram. This is how it was being done. Then the two brothers, the Tillesthanam Narsimha Bhagavatar and Panchu Bhagavatar, as in any good thing, the two brothers fell out with each other and abused each other in open postcards so that everybody from the village postman can read it and tell everybody else. Some of those postcards have still survived. So I'm talking with evidence. And then the younger brother conducts the Aradhana in Tiruvayyaru while the elder brother goes off to Kumbakonam to conduct it. And he dies within a year of conducting the Aradhana in Kumbakonam. So they say that the Aradhana has to be conducted in Tiruvayyaru. If you don't conduct it there, you die. They forgot that for 60 years, there was no Aradhana in Tiruvayyaru. But now old man died, so immediately said, no, nothing doing. Let's get on with it. We will all conduct it here. So the two groups
Periya Katchi and Chinna Katchi. The elder brothers faction is called the Periya Katchi. The younger brothers group is called the Chinna Katchi. They celebrate the Tyaga. It's like ADMK versus DMK. The elder brothers group will come 5 days before the Aradhana and start the Aradhana and end it on Aradhana day. Younger brother will start on Aradhana day and continue for 5 days afterwards. They will not even meet each other, the two groups. The advantage to the local people was that they were being fed for 10 days free of cost. So just like the midday meal scheme and other such charities that our wonderful political organizations practice, so people didn't do any work. They ate, they listened to some wonderful music and they went home. So for 10 days, Tyagaraja was really well cared for. After that, he was abandoned and trees used to grow, birds used to come and shit on his samadhi, and all kinds of strange behavior was going around in that place. Till the greatest courtesan of her time and the greatest representative of the Sringara tradition, Bengaluru Nagaratnamma, in 1921 decides to come back and resurrect the Samadhi of Tyagaraja. Now this woman in 1910 had republished Radhika Santwanamu, than which there cannot be a more erotic work, which was written by a woman, Muddu Palani, in the 18th century, and it looks at the art of lovemaking entirely from a woman's point of view. And Nagaratnamma had published it, and when it was published, it was criticized for being obscene. The government decided to ban the book. But the interesting thing is that Nagaratnamma's defense of the book is just wonderful. It says that, people say that this is a shameless work because it was written by a Devadasi. And in fact, the government records are even more brutal. I have seen those records. It says one prostitute wrote this book and another prostitute edited it and published it. This is the exact wording in the file concerning the Radhika Santwanamu. She says that these people talk about shame and things like that. Our profession is Sringara. Our dharma is Sringara. So just as it is the dharma of a housewife to be chaste, it is our dharma to have no chastity in us. So that is how she interprets the tradition of the Devadasi. And of course the book gets banned and all that. But Nagaratnamma was extraordinarily well-to-do. In 1905, she was paying income tax on an annual income of rupees 2 lakhs. And she, in 1921, decides to adopt the Samadhi of Tyagaraja. So she comes down to Thiruvayaru and she wants to purchase the land where the Samadhi is standing. They tell her that this is it's an inalienable trust. So you cannot buy the land. So she buys fertile land of the same size and gifts it to the trust and takes this land over. So the entire burial ground in Thiruvayaru just behind Baba Swami Agraharam becomes Bengaluru Nagaratnamma's property. And between 1921 and 1926, she puts up a temple for Tyagaraja. She also puts up a black granite idol of Tyagaraja, entirely interpreting him as she felt he would be, and placed it in front of the Samadhi and starts the Tyagaraja Aradhana from then on. But the whole world compliments her on building a temple. But in 1927, when the Aradhana happens and she comes to sing, all of them put down their instruments and they very politely tell her, a woman has no place in this Samadhi. She says, I built it. They say, that may be so. But during the Aradhana, we do not allow any woman to enter the place. Because Tyagaraja has sung songs like Yenta Nerchina. Where did Nauka Charitramu go? It had been conveniently relegated to the background. And they said that a woman has no place here. Nagaratnamma then takes them to court, locking up the Samadhi. The police come and break the Samadhi and conduct the Aradhana that year. And then they decree that the Samadhi is open to everyone. But she says that I've been told that I cannot conduct the Aradhana here. Very well. I will conduct the Aradhana behind the Samadhi, entirely with Devadasis. And so that is how Nagaratnamma's Tyagaraja Aradhana begins. So now there are 3 groups: Periya Katchi, Chinna Katchi, Nagaratnamma Katchi. And I still recall with great joy interviewing Nagaratnamma's coachman Krishnan. He was having a bath by a well in Thiruvayaru when I went and met him. And he put a stool for me and said, "Na kulichikitte irukken, neenga kelvi kelunga, appadiye badil sollidren." And I got wet in the process as well. But, Krishnan's description of the 40 Devadasis coming from Madras to conduct the Tyagaraja Aradhana that year. And you will pardon my using his words. ஒரே நாளில் 40 தேவடியா இந்த ஊருக்கு வந்தால் எப்படி இருக்கும் சாமி? எல்லாம் ட்ரெயினில் வந்தாங்க, நான் தான் அவங்கள கூட்டிட்டு வந்து இந்த யூனோ there is a செவ்வாய்க்கிழமை படித்துறைன்னு there is a beautiful சத்திரம் there. அங்கே தான் தங்கினாங்க எல்லாரும். பகல் வேளையில் எல்லாரும் நதியில் போய் குளிச்சாங்க. அப்புறம் சொக்கட்டான் ஆடினாங்க. தட் இஸ் தே பிளேட் கேம்ஸ் யூனோ. பாடினாங்க எல்லாரும். இரவில் ஒரு திருடன் வந்தான். எல்லாரும் சத்தம் போட்டு அவனை விரட்டினாங்க அங்கேருந்து. ஸோ தீஸ் வேர் ஆல் விமென் ஆஃப் ஸ்பிரிட். அண்ட் மறுநாள் காலையில் ஆராதனா பண்ணாங்க. இந்த பெரிய கட்சிக்கு ஒரு ஆள் போல எல்லாரும் இங்கே வந்துட்டாங்க இவங்க பாடுறத கேட்கறதுக்கு. Then the interesting thing is Nagaratnama was so clever that she didn't feed anybody. She said, if you want your food, go and eat it in the Periyakatchi. I am here only for conducting the Aradhana for Tyagaraja. So that is how the Tyagaraja Aradhana was done for a good 20 years with Chinnakatchi, Periyakatchi, Nagaratnama Katchi. And let's face it, a woman built the Samadhi for him. During the Aradhana time, all the flowers would come from another woman, Salem Chellapapa Ammal. She was another Devadasi. She was supplying the flowers. The silver vessels used there came from a third Devadasi called Padmasini Bai. And this is how the Aradhana was being conducted till 1941-42, when people began a move to unite the three factions. And that is how the factions got united. But with Nagaratnama laying down a condition that the property is still hers. It does not belong to the Tyagaraja Parabrahma, whatever Vaibhava Sabha or whatever they call it today. And in her will, there is a line that says, this property will be allowed for Tyagaraja Aradhana only as long as women artists are allowed to perform here. So for her, Tyagaraja was less important than the principle of women being involved in the Aradhana. That was the greater, motive. Or rather the line in the will, that you can conduct the Tyagaraja Aradhana anywhere else you want, but only as long as women are allowed to perform, you can perform here. Now the final story in that Aradhana is 1941, they all unite, and Sulamangalam Vaidyanatha Bhagavatar, who has been the bitterest opponent of this entire unification, and he never liked Nagaratnama for what she had done. He cursed her bitterly, and he was conducting his Harikatha when she slowly climbs up the steps and goes and sits next to him and says that for many years I have had this desire that I should sit next to you when you are performing. You are the embodiment of Tyagaraja. And I have today come and sat next to you because I want to hear your story. The whole crowd goes wild. They all laugh and they clap and all that. He grits his teeth and conducts his Harikatha, but he never ever comes back to the Tyagaraja Aradhana thereafter. He never forgives her for what she did. And so that is how the Aradhana gets conducted. In the middle, at one stage, he jeers her and tells her that, you have done everything. You've done the Aradhana, you've conducted all this. There's one thing you can never do. You can never do a Shraddham for Tyagaraja. She says, okay, let me try that also. And so she gets hold of a set of Brahmins and says that, tomorrow I want you to come and do a Shraddha for Tyagaraja in my house. At the end of it, you have to put the Akshaday on my head and say that all the fruits of the Shraddha is yours. That's all I want. They say that we have only one condition. We won't eat meals cooked by you. She says, I can bring a Brahmin cook. So a Brahmin cook arrives, and the Shraddha for Tyagaraja is also done by her. In her lifetime, the only thing she doesn't do is conduct the Unchavritti, which is the ritual begging, which is conducted. People today say Tyagaraja was very poor, so he begged, but that is not true. It is the Grahastha Dharma to do Unchavritti and seek alms by way of killing your ego. That's about it. And he did it. So that Unchavritti is the only thing that she didn't touch, but I'm finishing in a few minutes. I'll come to that. The point is that, as I said, when Nagaratnama, then the unification happened, people came. And when Rajaji came to inaugurate the Tyagaraja Aradhana in the early 40s, they said, Rajaji has come. I think that was 1951, he came to inaugurate the Aradhana. And he said that, it is you have a great sannyasini in your midst, this Nagaratnama. So I believe she said, அவர் என்ன சொல்றாரு? So உங்களை பெரிய சன்னியாசினின்னு சொல்றாரு. அவர்கிட்ட போய் சொல்லுங்க, நான் வெறும் தேவர் அடியாள். That's all I am. And when they broadcasted the recordings, the first word she said was, I am a Tevar Adiyal. And then started singing for Tyagaraja. That is the way she held that profession in such high regard. And so finally, Nagaratnama passes away in 1951, or 52, I think. And there is a big debate in the village of Thiruvayuru as to where she should be buried. and the whole village says that she should be buried next to Tyagaraja. So they open up the ground. The only woman to be buried in that entire area is Bengaluru Nagaratnamma. And so she is buried there, and then a statue is put up by a postman who had great devotion for her. He comes and he sculpts that statue and puts it up. So as I said, Samadhi built by a woman, silver vessels from a woman, flowers from a woman, statue of a woman facing him from that direction. Finally, in 1962, the electrification has never been done. During the Aradhana, it's a blaze of light, but rest of the year it is dark. The final nail in that coffin is given by Kolar Rajamma, who was another Devadasi, who in the memory of her consort Payani Subramanya Pillai comes and electrifies the whole place. And there is a stone there which commemorates electrification done in the memory of Payani M. Subramanya Pillai by Kolar Rajamma. So Tyagaraja somewhere along the way had to make his peace with the Devadasis whom he had condemned. And the musicians who tried to remove the Sringara element from him also had to understand that, this is an integral element in Tyagaraja's music. By just saying bhakti, 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 it is not this dry as stone bhakti. There is a lot of rasa in Tyagaraja. There are 678 songs and I have only quoted to you 6 of them. But there are several others where you have wonderful descriptions like Vinana Asakunni Unnananura in Pratapavarali, where he says that one day you and Sita were playing dice and Hanuman and Bharata were eavesdropping on your conversation. I would also like to join them and peer at you through that crack in the door and listen to. What can get more erotic than that? And then there is this other description of the Rama reclining at rest and on a bed of Chitra Ratnamaya Sesha Talpamandu, sleeping on a bed of precious stones, which is actually Adisesha. And the women of the court sing rare ragas to him and please him as he is going to sleep. So much of small details. Before I finish, I'll just come to the last bit, which is what happened to the Unchavritti. Till the 1960s, the Unchavritti was an all-male affair. Then one day when the Unchavritti was happening, Brindamma caught hold of M.S. Subbulakshmi's hand and T. Mukta's hand and said, let's join this and see what happens. And nobody said anything. Ever since then, women have been part of the Unchavritti as well. So there again, 3 Devadasis, remember. The final M.S. Amma, Brindamma, Muktama, all women of that particular community and who later made a great name for themselves. So Tyagaraja, as I said, had Sringara in him. I only quoted a few examples for you. The world tried to obliterate that. And then finally, these wonderful women came forth and re-established the tradition and the attachment with Tyagaraja. I look forward to Nauka Charitramu being staged once again. Several years ago, I was too young to appreciate its beauty. But I remember Radha and her team dancing for it with Sujata Vijayaraghavan singing the songs. That was a wonderful experience, and I have never seen Nauka Charitramu being staged again. Someday I hope that all of you dancers over here will make bold to perform that and make us all remember how great Tyagaraja was even when it came to Sringara. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now we will have a few questions if there are any.
Use the mic, sir.
Just to give you an information that Nauka Charitram has been done by other dancers, at least 2 programs I've seen. One was done by Shobana and the other was done by Jayanti Subramaniam.
And I think Kamala has done one long before these people.
Kamala was the first one, yeah.
Oh, you were the Krishna at that time. Ah. Oh, okay.
Ratna says she has done it in Kuchipudi.
When are we going to see it in Chennai? That's the question. Next year. Good.
In fact, recently Shruti had organized a Legdam Mela in which Sujata Vijayaraghavan presented Nauka Charitramu in Tyagaraja's Nauka Charitramu. And of course, we must mention that Sita Ratnakar has done a very fine presentation for Doordarshan of Nauka Charitramu. And people could also see that too. And I think one of them was here, Pavitra. Here she is. She was part of that.
May I say a few words with your permission?
Certainly. And I accept them all.
Yes. I have had association with Devadasis even before my birth. That's a fact.
Yeah, it is a fact. It's documented in my book. He told me this, and I remember this.
Bangalore Nagaratnam.
Yes, very much.
Okay. Now, there are many opinions about the origin of Javali. 10 different scholars have said 10 different things. All of them cannot be true. I say, with enough knowledge about the prosody of Javalis, Tyagaraja wrote them.
Berufen. It's surprising that lightning hasn't struck this building already.
Shuddha Deshi, what you quoted.
Yeah, that is Shuddha Desi, yes.
Indu Kaugalintura. It can pass off as a Javali,
Very
and
true.
I taught it as a Javali to a Devadasi in Vijayanagaram 60 years ago. Apart from that, they contain the Vastuvu, the subject, which is contained in many Javalis, particularly Kalanidhi Javali.
Chinnanatana Chayibetitivi.
That you held my hand, that you taught
When
me
I
to
was
make
young,
love,
yes.
in so many Javalis. There are two others which I forget at the moment, but earlier, the Yakshaganas and all that, they are not in the Javali prosody. Only in Tyagaraja I have found. Of course, earlier in Annamacharya,
Of course.
there are one or two, but they're all God-oriented. They're not, Javalis are human-oriented. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, rendu moonu mic. Music Academy we give only one mic that controls the questions.
Why do you say you don't believe Tyagaraja as Swami or saint, and how would you like to address him?
Tyagaraja, the composer. That's all. See, if you look at it a little deeply, he's had all the emotions that we've had. He's quarreled with his brother. He's interested in what is happening among the neighbors. He sold property. There are documents that he sold property. So, he is not Ramana Maharshi. He is not, say, Adi Shankara. He is not Kanchi Paramacharya or anything like that. He is a human being, extraordinarily gifted person. But he does not have to be deified and lifted to the level of a Swami. See, in what way is he superior to, say, a Dikshitar or a Shama Shastri? Why is Muthuswami Dikshitar not Swami Muthuswami Dikshitar or Saint Muthuswami Dikshitar? That's the point. So I feel that he was a great composer. That's about it. If you look at it, Muthu Tandavar, Marimutta Pillai, Arunachala Kavirayar, they are all of that category. They were all householders. This deification is only a 20th century phenomenon, where we wanted to, claim him as one of our own and lift him beyond the realm of the ordinary. In fact, Tyagaraja's biography, as written by his students, even when he was alive, does not have a single miracle in it. And that biography gets over in 1.5 pages flat. And he married twice. There was his first wife, the first wife died, then he married a second time. Now, if this was a personality that was completely uninterested in that form of life, why so? Sitamba Garbhajataya Parvati Kamaleticha Dvibharya Samyutaya Tyagarajaya Mangalam. That is how the stotram goes. So he had 2 wives. So that is very clear. So he was a person, he was a householder, an extraordinarily gifted householder. So you look at Srinivasa Ramanujam, mathematician, something like that. He was outstanding. But we don't call him Saint Ramanuja, the mathematician, do we? So.
Thank you.
Yeah, there is a book by William Jackson, yes. That's the best biography I've ever come across on Tyagaraja. 2 books, the Renewal of Legend and Tyagaraja Life and Lyrics, yes.
அதாவது அவர் பாடுவதற்காக எழுதினாரா ஆடுவதற்காக எழுதினாரா இந்த மாதிரி விஷயங்களை
இரண்டிற்குமே எழுதவில்லை. அவருடைய மன சந்துஷ்டிக்காக அவர் எழுதினார். நாம் தாம் அதை எடுத்துக்கொண்டு பாடுகிறோம், ஆடுகிறோம், கூத்தாடுகிறோம்.
So nowadays, the stories which we hear about Saint Tyagaraja, they all are fabricated.
Absolute mithya. Don't believe a word of it. This personality was far more interesting than all that. Yeah. And a very complex personality also. If you read his songs, you realize very, very complex as a person. He's forever trying to come to terms with the fact that he's living among us with all our frailties and our weaknesses. He is unable to tolerate that. He must have been a bit of a type A personality from what I can see. And the other thing is that he sometimes, his relationship with Rama is also very difficult. So very sarcastic at moments, sometimes extremely loving, sometimes totally a slave, sometimes questioning his existence. So he is a very, very complex man. He's not I wouldn't put him as a run-of-the-mill individual. It does. Sadly, we have no. She's asking whether Nauka Charitramu.
Periods of time, so because maybe did he become more bhakti oriented and philosophical and maybe a little cranky as he became older, writing about the neighbors, and was his
It could have been
younger
quite likely.
days
But the
more-
crankiness is also a delight. The way he writes things like, if your daughter is undergoing a difficult labor, why blame your son-in-law for it? These are all lines that come in his songs. So, his crankiness is also wonderful. He's a nice tata who is very difficult to get along with, but at the same time, you get to understand a lot about life with him around. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of day 3. Tomorrow we have 4 immensely varied sessions. We start with Geeta Govindam invoking Radha in a twin session by Srimati Sharmila Biswas and Vidya Subramaniam. We move on to Dr. Neena Prasad talking about Mohiniyattam and Shringaram. And then we have a presentation on the sacred and sensual in metaphor and movement by Srimati Alarmelvalli and Arundhati Subramaniam. And we end with a performative paper on gender fluidity in Vaishnava tradition by Dr. Anita Ratnam. Do not miss these very exciting sessions, and I hope to see you all here tomorrow morning. Thank you. Namaste.